It is 10:02. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. National Signing Day continues in college football. Some big early gets for Tennessee this morning. Four-star running back Justin Williams chose the Vols over Auburn, and four-star defensive lineman Tyree West choosing Tennessee over Florida State West, a former Georgia commit. The Vols class up to 17 signings on the day, currently ranks 15th in the country in the 247 Sports Composite. Stay tuned to 104.5 The Zone all day for updates. A COVID outbreak has hit the NFL, over 75 positive tests in the last 2 days. The latest, Browns quarterback Baker Mayfield has tested positive, as well as Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski. Titans wide receiver Des Fitzpatrick was placed on the COVID list on Tuesday. He joined safety Jamal Carter. Meanwhile, the Titans returned to the practice field at St. Thomas Sports Park today in preparation for Sunday's game in Pittsburgh. Mike Vrabel meets with the media at noon. The 18th-ranked Vols on the hardwood raced past USC Upstate 96-52. Olivier Cumwell led with 21 points. They will meet Memphis next in Bridgestone Arena on Saturday morning. The Tigers knocked off 6th-ranked Alabama in an upset on Tuesday, 92-78. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
It's a Wednesday, but it is Happy National Signing Day in the world of college football. Welcome in to 104.5 The Zone. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock. Lucas Panzica is making it happen behind the scenes. The Vols on the recruiting trail have made it happen, and we will be giving you live updates for their commitments all day long on this National Signing Day. 615-737-1045 is the number. If you want to jump in and discuss Josh Heupel, what they've been able to do so far, how you would like to see them finish throughout the course of today as the signings continue to roll in across the sport. 615-737-1045. They're up to 17 right now, including the latest 3-star offensive lineman Brian Grant. That made official about 30 minutes ago. So we'll keep these things rolling in throughout the course of the day. You heard Lucas mention in his update the NFL's COVID outbreak. We're looking at Baker Mayfield, Kevin Stefanski of the Cleveland Browns. Right now, the Titans placing Des Fitzpatrick on the COVID list yesterday, so that is something. And really, the Preds look like they're getting ready to go through something similar at this juncture. Their game last night postponed because of Calgary's issues. Now, there is some reporting being done that they may be experiencing COVID positive tests at this juncture. So we'll talk about that later on. With this signing day, though, I think that so far, the results, if you look through this class of 17 thus far on 247 Sports or wherever it is that you're tracking these things, I know Lucas has been up at you want to snort this. You look like you've been actively snorting recruiting day or National Signing Day all day long. Like you look a little bloodshot. I'll be honest with you.
It's not as intense as it was growing up. Like when I was in high school, this was the day that I faked sick. But yes,
are you kidding me?
When the day comes around, it does. As someone that has followed recruiting, has covered recruiting, it does feel like Christmas sometimes.
Well, sure. If you cover it, I understand that. I did not know. All right, put it on the poll. At Buck Reising is where you vote on the polls. Have you ever faked sick from school? Have you ever in your life fake sick from school? I botched that. Faked sick from school having to do with a sporting event. Like I'm sure there's a better way to phrase that than I've just done it. But National Signing Day, I feel like not a lot of people are skipping school or staying home from work or whatever it is for National Signing Day. Although it is a big deal, right? You're building the foundation for not just the season to come, but the future of your program. And for Vols fans, that's got to be really exciting, given the way that they were able to capitalize on momentum on the field and how it seems to be, at least in the early going this morning, it seems to be paying dividends as far as recruiting is concerned. Now, we've outlined a lot of the reasons why there's not a ton of recruits in state, and that was something that I thought Tom Luganbill of ESPN, who covers this stuff every day. He was kind enough to join us yesterday before all this whole thing kicked up. I think he really summarized well what Tennessee's recruiting class was going to look like this year and what Josh Heupel has kind of been working through and his staff to be able to make some positive headway despite everything that loomed over the University of Tennessee. This was Tom Luginbill speaking with us yesterday about the recruiting process for the Vols.
Listen, I actually think that Josh Heupel, given the set of circumstances, and I think you have to go back and you got to really look at the calendar and what he walked into with the pandemic, the inability to get in front of kids face to face, the inability to get off campus, and the inability for kids to come on campus really set them back, a real struggle. I think they've rebounded and done well because they've exceeded expectations on the field. Remember, winning cures all woes. And if you actually look at Tennessee and how they played, look at who their losses are to. The team that won the SEC, the team that won the ACC, all right, the team that was the runner-up in the SEC in Georgia. They didn't lose to any chumps. This was a football team that got better and better and better. And I think the one area that is concerning a little bit, and again, I think this has more to do with the pandemic and the arrival of the coaching staff, is that it's rare where the state of Tennessee has a really, really strong in-class state. Generally you have to go into everybody else's backyard to build your roster. But in 2022, it's a really strong year. And they don't have a lot of the top-level guys in the state verbally committed to them, including defensive tackle Walter Nolan. But the 2023 class, I think, in the state of Tennessee could be every bit as talented. And now they're not behind on that class. If anything, they're ahead of schedule. So what if they lose some ground a little bit in the 2022 because of maybe some circumstances that they can't control, they could regain that momentum in 2023. And let's not forget, there's a couple of things in recruiting that the prospects do not like. They don't like uncertainty, and they don't like instability. And right, wrong, or indifferent, a looming NCAA investigation is not something that you can just, kind of wave a magic wand and make sure it goes away. The kids want finality. The coaches want finality, so they at least know what they're dealing with. And right now, they don't have that luxury of being able to tell kids on that front exactly what the final tally is going to be.
That's Tom Luginbill kind of outlining what Josh Heupel and his staff have been doing on the recruiting trail throughout all of the things that he walked into. Buck Reising here with you on this National Signing Day. So we've devised a plan. I think we've put together a plan as a show. Lucas has been very, very excited about this, and I'm excited about this too, especially because now we've got some stuff to work around. We're going to play a sound every time Tennessee gets a new commitment over the course of the next, 2 hours and 50 minutes. Now, let's start with the sound itself, Lucas, before we play people the clip that it originates from.
I love Peyton Manning.
All right, so that's going to be the sound that you hear every time Tennessee has a new commitment. One more time for me.
I love Peyton Manning.
Oh, we've got multiple.
There's two.
Spicy. Spicy, look at you. So what is that? Who is that woman? What is that context? What is happening there? Now, if you're a diehard Vols fan, I imagine that probably gives you a little bit of PTSD.
Old Bev.
Old Bev Davenport.
Former chancellor at Tennessee. That sound is from when she introduced John Curry as the new athletic director at the University of Tennessee. And I don't know, maybe March, April-ish of 2017, Butch Jones was still the head coach. And then, as we all know, about 8 months later, everything that happened. John Curry now at Wake Forest and doing a pretty decent job at Wake Forest. They've got a football program that's rolling there right now. But that is Beverly Davenport, former chancellor at Tennessee.
And it was such a glorious moment. We should have known that things were going to tailspin after that first press conference with Bev Davenport.
Very nice lady, by the way.
Oh, I'm sure a lovely woman. I don't know her personally. This was my only exposure to Beverly Davenport. And I remember this was a couple years after I had been living in Tennessee, but really when I started to pay attention to the goings-on, because that was, of course, the greatest, it was right around the greatest source of tumult, or however what you want to call it, before the chaos broke loose in the end of the Butch Jones era, to Shiano Sunday, to then Jeremy Pruitt and John Curry and Dan Wolken and all of the things that went into that bleep show that was the University of Tennessee's coaching search. So I want to play the full clip for people if you don't remember that, because that clip in itself, it sounds, everybody loves Peyton Manning. Who doesn't love Peyton Manning? But then you listen to the full clip and you're like, what?
I have to share this with you. I've gotten so many letters and so many wishes. And someone wrote just last week, if you do anything that people don't like, just tell them that you love Peyton Manning. So I'm here today to tell you I love Peyton Manning, and I'm going to keep on loving Peyton Manning, and you can just clap all you want to for that. So thank you, Peyton. I loved you even before I came to the University of Tennessee. So every time I do something that people don't like, I'm just going to tell you I love Peyton Manning.
Took about 8 months.
I love Peyton Manning.
Sure did, Bev. So every time Tennessee makes a signing today on National Signing Day, you will hear the voice of Beverly
Davenport. I love
Davenport.
Peyton Manning.
Amen.
It's our version of the little, what's the da-da-da-da-da, the draft sounder.
Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, I was thinking of something along those lines.
I like that you went into this with like actual, actual producer with the not that you're not an actual producer, but that you went into this well-intentioned.
I have been pretending this whole time.
Well, so who are you talking to? You're pretending. You kidding me? But I love that you went into this with actual, you're going to make this a well-produced, very, very informative, very formal setting where we're announcing commitments to the University of Tennessee like you would at the NFL draft. And instead I said, no, I love Peyton Manning. I need it in my bones. So we'll keep track of National Signing Day for you. And I want to know, as we sit here today, and of course this will continue to roll on into the afternoon, you'll have full coverage here on 104.5 The Zone. I know Blaine and Mickey are going to talk about it. I know that 3HL are going to continue to talk about it. And I know that J. Martin Ramon did a great job with it this morning because it has been nonstop really since about 8 a.m. Central Time. And, of course, everybody's been tracking this in the world of college football leading up to the main event today. So we'll continue to update you with the prospects that are signing with the University of Tennessee. The most recent that did spurn the University of Tennessee, though, the number 1 overall JUCO prospect, cornerback Keontae Scott. He went with Auburn over Tennessee at this juncture, so we'll update you on those as well. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back. Buck Reising here with you on 104.5 The Zone. National Signing Day ongoing across the country. A little bit of Christmas Day a little bit of Christmas early. I almost said, I forgot it was December. This football season feels like it's moving so quickly. It has moved so quickly. Forgot that Christmas is right around the corner. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. I want to ask you, and it is, of course, early in the day. This will continue throughout the course of the afternoon, and there will be reporting on it well after this portion of National Signing Day is done. But how are you evaluating Josh Heupel based on his recruiting so far? And we're going to ask you that question every hour, basically, to see how Josh Heupel has done and to keep an updated picture of where the Vols recruiting class is at this point. Now, the two highlights at this juncture, Justin Williams, the running back out of Georgia, who committed to the University of Tennessee, picked the Vols over Auburn. There's a really good write-up about him on 247sports.com, govols.com, where our buddy Ryan Callahan is tracking this stuff. And then Tyree West, the defensive lineman who decommitted from Georgia and then ended up picking Tennessee over Florida State right now. Defensive line coach Rodney Garner, this man is the ringer. There's no question about it. Like, this is the best recruiter on staff by a mile, no?
Yes.
This has to be Tim Banks' best friend. You have to keep this man as close to the best as humanly possible because he is going to be able to find talent like this, and he's a big reason why they were in the running for Walter Nolan, and why, by the way, they have not given up on Walter Nolan, something that we talked to Tom Luganbill about yesterday. But just to kind of give you a summary of who Justin Williams is and how he came to land at Tennessee, visited the campus a little more than a month ago, according to Ryan Callahan. He decommitted from West Virginia 4 days after that visit. The Vols have played a major role in convincing him to reopen his recruitment, and that ultimately ended up being the right fit for him in Tennessee's offense, which is massive, right? Because Tyon Evans is in the transfer portal. There's going to be, the number in the transfer portal is going to continue to balloon, and it's going to be really interesting to see the impact of both name, image, and likeness and comments made by not just Lane Kiffin yesterday, but I saw Mike Leach was out there with similar thoughts. Of course, we played for you some audio from Tom Luganbill yesterday, who articulated the issues that both the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness are having on the recruiting cycle right now, this season in particular, with the extra year of eligibility that was afforded to players who were on college athletic programs throughout the course of the pandemic season. It's really, really gummed up the works in a way that is costing some of these high school kids. And so ultimately, it will be interesting to see how the Vols and how this Heupel coaching staff figure out the marriage of transfer portal free agency, for lack of a better term, how to maximize what the Vols bring as far as prominence, as far as branding, into the name, image, and likeness equation, where you're basically saying, hey, you can make a lot more money here because there are a whole bunch of people who are super passionate and super financially invested in the success of that power team. And then, of course, how they fare on the recruiting trail, which is the biggest question about Heupel, right? You inherit Scott Frost's team at UCF. You struggle with some of the talent that's there in a state like Florida, recruiting even at the smaller programs like UCF, as opposed to Miami, who's had their own struggles keeping talent in state. And then, of course, what Florida and Florida State are, you should still be able to get above average prospects coaching at a school in Florida, given what is around you, what is in the area. And that was something that Heupel at UCF was criticized for. Thus far, the things seem to be trending well. We have comments on Zone TV from Vols fans like Brandon Rushing, who say Heupel getting a top 15 class is very respectable given the circumstance. And it's always prefaced with that, right? Given the circumstance. But Ty Simpson and Walter Nolan don't come around in-state very often, if ever. So you can hear that in Brandon's voice, right? Oh, this is really nice so far, but imagine if we could get Ty Simpson or Walter Nolan, or maybe both. And you start to hear the wheels turning and Vols fans' minds across the state. And, there's Vols fans across the country, of course. Just how much are the expectations going to be elevated? How much more scrutiny is going to be on Josh Heupel based on how well or how poorly he recruits? It's going to be a really, really interesting case study to watch with one of the biggest brands in college football as it looks to rebuild. Because the name, image, and likeness stuff has opened up everything. And then there is the wonder, the unknown of the transfer portal. Now, the transfer portal isn't a complete unknown, but the immediate eligibility that the one-time transfer offers makes this the wild, wild west. We ran through. Lucas, do you have the list of quarterbacks just to kind of refresh people's minds? Because this is going to impact recruiting, of course. There may be programs who favor the idea of opting for a veteran-proven commodity, veteran in terms of college football is concerned, because there's a bunch of them in the portal right now, as opposed to what you would have in a freshman quarterback, even though they may have above-average talent. If you're a head coach trying to stave off some criticism and you think you can do better, play more consistent football with some of the options in the transfer portal right now, you may opt for that. Who's in there right now?
A lot of people. Quarterbacks alone, we talked about Quinn Ewers, Ohio State to Texas. We talked about Dylan Gabriel from UCF, and he's rumored to be close to UCLA. Spencer Rattler, Oklahoma to South Carolina. Bo Nix, Auburn. One interesting thing about Bo Nix, I read on The Athletic, he designated on his submission that he did not want schools reaching out to him. So maybe he's already got something narrowed down there. You've got Max.
Wait. Say that sentence again.
On his transfer portal submission, according to The Athletic, Bo Nix had it specify that he did not want multiple schools reaching out to him. He would be doing the reaching out.
All right, stop right there. Imagine saying that sentence in any other version of college football.
Yeah.
For this year. Do you know how insane that is to me? That Bo Nix is saying, I'm not taking any more requests. I'm not taking any more calls on this. I know what I want to do.
Yeah. That's what that indicates.
That's this concept working exactly from a player standpoint how you wanted it to. Finish the list, and then we'll go to the audio of Lane Kiffin, because I think this is really, really interesting, especially for a guy like Lane.
2 LSU quarterbacks in Miles Brennan and Max Johnson, one from my alma mater, one from your alma mater. Michael Penix Jr. from Indiana, Harrison Bailey from Tennessee, Adrian Martinez, Nebraska, a former Tennessee commit, and Keaton Slovis, USC, a former blue chip prospect. That was one that kind of snuck under the radar.
Zach Riley said, "Get out."
Zach Calzada from Texas A&M. The list just goes on and on. You probably have to take recruiting rankings at this point with a bit of a grain of salt, given the way the transfer portal has shaken out.
Well, that's the whole thing. I'm looking, of course, and I've got the live updates from 247 Sports, Go Vols 247 up on my laptop right now, because this is obviously going to continue to be fluid throughout the course of the day at programs across the country. But how much of their business model does this warp with the way that recruiting rankings have been assigned and how they have evaluated this talent and what the transfer portal is going to do to alter what the outlook of that team's quote-unquote class looks like? Listen to Lane Kiffin talking about this. Well, actually, let's do this first. Let's listen to Tom Luginbill talk about the transfer portal and its impact on recruiting specifically, and then we'll get into the NIL conversation, because I think that's a whole different layer to this thing.
I think it's ruining it, quite frankly. I think we've got an epidemic on our hands that is not healthy for anybody involved. Some of this was easily foreseen. Some of it is unintended consequences. But when you combine the transfer portal, the extra year of eligibility, all right, and then the recruitment of the high school player, there's not enough scholarships to go around. And generally, in normal cycles, college coaching staffs are going to know what their hard number is. They're going to know what the number is that they can bring in the current class. They're going to know maybe what they could blue shirt or what they could gray shirt. But now these coaches have no way of truly formulating exactly what their scholarship number is going to be. They don't know who's going out the door. They don't know who's coming in, whether you're a sitting coaching staff or a new coaching staff that's trying to scramble to put a staff together and salvage recruiting prior to the early signing period. There's not a lot of answers out there. You know, they dumped this in the lap of the college programs and just allowed free movement from everybody that we're now managing 85-man free agent rosters in college football. And I know there's a lot of talk about maybe we go back to the single signing period in February. Maybe we move the early signing period to, let's just say, the third weekend in January, back up the second one deeper into February. And I'll tell you what I would do, guys. I would make the early portion, at least the first 2 to 3 weeks of December, a dead period for everybody. Let these new coaching staffs catch their breath. Let the sitting coaching staffs and everybody involved in college football start to figure out what their rosters look like, because they don't know who's going to be on the team and who's not. And so what's happening is somebody's going to lose. The person that's going to lose is the high school student athlete, because what schools are doing is they're withholding scholarships for the spring and summer period to see if they can fish the transfer portal that would normally go to high school prospects. So let's just say on average you take 4 to 5 guys, times that by 130 teams, and there's a lot of kids that don't have a scholarship that would have 2 years ago.
That's Tom Luganbill of ESPN, who is on the recruiting beat, detailing exactly how the transfer portal, in his opinion, as somebody who this is his area of expertise, how this has made things more difficult on both the universities and on the high school recruits. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this. And for the Vols, you know, they are in a position where even despite what we've detailed, whether it's the ghost of NCAA violations that you have looming over you, ever present like some kind of ghost at this point, and where you're looking at all of the things that Tennessee is trying to do in some unproven commodities now that look more concrete, and you're selling a product to high schoolers that not only looks organized, but looks like it fits a lot of what high school athletes, particularly on the offensive side of the football, exactly what they want to be a part of. And then there's the fact that you finished the way that you did, where on your schedule en route to your 7 wins this season, the teams that you lost to were absolutely teams that should have beaten you, whether it's the ACC champion in Pitt, whether it's Alabama or Georgia. Like, these are not games that you would look at and say, man, Tennessee really missed an opportunity there. No, they took advantage with a lack of depth and talent that just, jumped ship after Jeremy Pruitt was fired for cause. The way that the pieces have kind of been put back together, I think gives parents confidence in the ability for their child to be developed under this coaching staff and to enjoy themselves, by the way, while doing it. The biggest criticism of Jeremy Pruitt, I think, and maybe I'm incorrect in this, Lucas, I don't know what your biggest criticism of Jeremy Pruitt was as the head coach of your alma mater, but from my standpoint, as somebody who's just watching the sport and the way that this man conducts himself, the kids sound after the fact when you hear people like Theo Jackson talk about it, when he was speaking to the media throughout the course of this season under Heupel, how much different the experience was under Pruitt than it is under Heupel, and how much the athletes are enjoying themselves more. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. How do you think Josh Heupel and his staff will pull through today on National Signing Day? Because there's an extra layer of this that I think works as a part of Tennessee's 3-pronged approach, right? You have name, image, and likeness advantages. You have a transfer portal that is loaded with quarterback talent and an offense that is hugely appealing to the quarterback position. And, of course, you look at this and you say you have an environment that works very, very well at a big brand name university that is trying to pull itself back to that kind of previous greatness and seems to be on pace to doing so. Because when you factor in the final part of this, the name, image, and likeness, well, how is this going to skew what kind of athlete that you're getting, one, and really what has this done to kind of change the worldview of the high schoolers who are coming in. We've spoken about Quinn Ewers many, many times, who was the Texas high school quarterback, left high school after his junior year, went to Ohio State, made $1 million in name, image, and likeness money. Without playing a snap, he's transferred, and now he's at Texas, where he's going to make a whole bunch more without having played a snap. Listen to Lane Kiffin discuss this as somebody who has to have an eye for this thing and how it's kind of adapted the way that they go about constructing their roster.
I think people really say it this way, but let's not make a mistake. I mean, we have free agency in college football, and the kids a lot of times go to where they're going to get paid the most. So no one else is saying that maybe, but, the kids say, this is what I'm getting here for NIL, and so what we really have, it is what it is. Free agency has been created in college football. I can go, except you can't lock people into a contract. They can go at any time. So it's a new world that we're in, and sometimes they want to come to you and say, I get this much money if I go there. So this is just a whole new thing to deal with.
Now, he doesn't sound like he's burying it, but he sounds like he's just being realistic about how his job and his staff's job is about to change. Because I think the words in print look more dismissive of NIL and paying college athletes in print than they do when you hear Lane Kiffin articulate it. And I think that that's going to be something that a lot of coaches have to go through. And honestly, people are going to put that in front of recruits and recruit against Lane Kiffin because of it. That's why nobody's saying it that way. That's why nobody's saying it at all. They're trying to ignore the fact and just gloss over that they're even more used car salesmen than ever college football coaches have been.
He's not wrong, right?
No, of course not.
Well, it's just now it's a two-way street. Coaches can recruit players and then leave at any moment.
Well, who did they learn that? Who did the players learn this from? They learned it from the coaches.
Yeah, coaches can recruit players and leave at any moment, and players can be recruited by coaches and leave at any moment. It's a two-way street.
It's fascinating. 615-737-1045 to the phones we go. Joseph is in Smyrna, up next on 1045 The Zone. What's up, Joseph?
Hey, Buck. Just curious at Bo Nix saying what he said, putting into his submission letter. Are we possibly headed for college kids issuing like no clause contracts or headed for, hey, I promise, making these college coaches promise, hey, you get another quarterback, I'm leaving. Are we headed that way?
Oh, I mean, sure enough. And it's a great point that you bring up, Joseph, because and what Lane Kiffin has said, it's not necessarily going to look like a no clause, a no trade clause or a no recruitment clause, for lack of a better term, in an athlete's contract. Because they don't have contracts, as Lane Kiffin has just said, right? You can't lock them down for a couple of years because that's what the one-time transfer has allowed them to avoid. Now, it comes at a time where this gets more complicated because it's not just the one-time transfer. It's NIL on top of the one-time transfer, which creates the perfect storm for the kind of free agency that you're talking about, where, I mean, maybe they can put it in. Lucas, give me the exact wording on what Bo Nix put in his transfer portal submission.
From Max Olson of The Athletic. But the way he chose to enter the portal on Monday added some mystery to the process. Nix indicated on his portal submission that he does not want to be contacted by other schools, according to a source.
So what Joseph is asking, it exists. He's just done it.
Yep.
So this is what's going to be so interesting until what is the end of the discovery period, Lucas? If you could look this up for me. What's the end of the discovery period in the name, image, and likeness, like first calendar year? Because I know they put a hard date on it or a hard month on it at the very least, to where they're in the middle of this exploratory period where they kind of let it be the Wild West until they figure out exactly the places that they need to rein it in. And in the meantime, people are like Bo Nix, and I'll play you some audio from Cade Mays, who of course is the Vols' best offensive lineman, coming up next. We'll continue to take your phone calls. It's really, really interesting the way that Cade Mays on with Jason Swaim. What's the name of the show that he does with Jason Swaim, that Jason Swaim does with the players? We'll find out for you, but you're going to listen to Cade Mays tell you what it's going to take financially to bring him back to the University of Tennessee in 2022. Your phone calls as well. I'm Buck Reising on this National Signing Day, 1045 The Zone. Things are getting nuts on this National Signing Day. Welcome back. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock. A quick update. Bruce Feldman, before we get back to the phones and we play you some audio from Cade Mays that I think is going to interest you. Lucas just whispered in my ear, huge news. I assume it's the Deion Sanders thing that you're talking about?
Yes.
Deion Sanders has flipped Travis Hunter, the nation's number one recruit, and a cornerback, no less, from his alma mater, Florida State, to join him at an HBCU, Jackson State. It has unquestionably become the biggest signing day stunner in my 20-plus years of covering this stuff. Bruce Feldman of The Athletic. That is crazy. I was just thinking about Deion Sanders and Eddie George here locally at TSU to see what kind of impact those guys will have on their respective universities and how much something like that is going to pay dividends when you factor it into all the other stuff we've been talking about with the recruiting process and the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness. And that is such a massive, massive development in the middle of all this stuff. And we'll get back to the Vols here shortly, and we'll continue to keep things updated for you as far as National Signing Day is concerned. Remember, when you hear these words,
that ain't no problem. Huh? That ain't no problem.
No.
What did you do?
I played the wrong thing.
What did you do?
I love Peyton Manning.
I played the wrong one.
What was that?
I missed.
I've never heard that sound before.
That's the Shannon Sharp. That ain't no problem.
Oh, so wait, do you share hotkeys with
No,
Jason
it's next to the I Love Peyton one, and I just missed.
Unbelievable. Here we're trying to do a professional radio show. This was your idea, by the way.
Oh, is this professional?
I love Peyton Manning.
That is not. Anytime you hear that, by the way, that means somebody just committed to the University of Tennessee. We're going to play for you some Cade Mays audio here in just a second. Let's go to Glenn, though, in Smyrna, up next on 104.5 The Zone. Hello, Glenn.
Hey, how you guys doing, man?
We are great.
Rough day for Florida State so far, right? You lose your quarterback, and then you lose that four-star DT, Tyree West, to Tennessee.
Oh, it's been brutal. Mike Norvell has to be pissed.
Well, so do the fans, right? I mean, the fans are already jumping off the boat off of Norville now for sure. Hey, you know what? I think if we look back at September, looked at this Tennessee football staff and said, hey, they had a chance to be in the top 20 in recruiting, I think a lot of people would laugh for many reasons. But one, he just took over a program that was just decimated just from, incompetent coaching, and we can go on and on. But I think when you look at what they've done so far today, it's been anything short of phenomenal. And, Hooker's back next year. They have a chance to maybe be better next year. You look at the schedule, there's definitely some time there. But I've been very, as a fan, impressed with Heupel on this staff and what they've been able to do so far. And they have a long way to go, no doubt. The NCAA stuff still isn't over. Yeah, they came out and said they're not a bowl ban, but NCAA hasn't come out and said anything. But as a fan, you've got to be proud. You've got to like what the staff's doing, not only on the field but off the field. He comes off as a genuine guy. I think guys actually want to play for him. And Rodney Garner, what else can you say about him? You knew he was an elite recruiter. He's proved it today. For Vol fans, hang on tight. It's going to be a fun ride, I think.
I think it's spicy. I love. Go ahead and give him the sound. We haven't done it in a while. There it is. Thank you, Glenn. 615-737-1045. This is. They're top. They have the 15th best recruiting class in the country right now, and we'll continue to update you on their recruits as we mentioned to start the show, and we'll continue to keep you aware of this. They are up to 17 signees, including the last signing about an hour ago, 3-star offensive lineman Brian Grant made official, according to our friend Eric Kane at VolQuest. The biggest get so far, Justin Williams, the running back out of Georgia, Tyree West, and the caller brought up Rodney Garner, the defensive line coach, who was able to get Tyree West, who decommitted from Georgia, and picked the Vols over Florida State. Florida State fans have to be furious because not only is their recruiting class falling apart very, very rapidly, Mike Norvell just got an extension. That can't feel great after all the ways that they have fallen flat on their face really since Jimbo Fisher left. Man, nobody played it smarter than Jimbo. Look at him.
A 1-year extension. What does that do for you?
As a college football coach, nothing.
2025 to 2026. What in the world does that do?
Nothing.
Just makes the buyout bigger. It makes no sense. It's a candidate
Not
for
from
the
the
dumbest thing in
university
sports.
standpoint. It's genius if you're Mike Norvell. Bless his agent.
Sure.
Good for his agent. My God. So they are making this is why I think the dream job of anybody, no matter what you do for a living, no matter what your career aspirations are, I would say to you that the greatest job in the United States of America is that of failed middle-class college football coach, because you can make generational wealth for sucking at your job and live for the rest of your life. Will Muschamp is living like a king from being just kind of a middle-of-the-road meh college football coach. It's ridiculous. But something also to factor in, and what the caller brought up about Heupel and his staff specifically right now, regarding all of the things that are working well for him, but also what the University of Tennessee offers in and of itself. I want you to listen to this clip from Cade Mays, who does a show with Jason Swain. The players, the Tennessee players, do a show with Jason Swain. It's called Tennessee Prime on a regular basis. My buddy Zach Reagan at A to Z Sports, he tweeted this out this morning. Listen to the clip talking of Swain interviewing Cade Mays and asking him where he is at this juncture in his decision to potentially return to Tennessee next season.
Say it again. So Austin's question was, am I leaving or am I coming back?
Yeah, I can hear it.
So, I haven't made a decision. I'm in the middle, 50-50, but I love this school. I love my teammates. I would love to come back and play another year with my brother, but I've got a great opportunity to go fulfill a dream and play at the next level. So, with those two options, I definitely feel like there could be an NIL deal, to supplement what I could make if I went to the NFL. So that's kind of where I'm at right now in my decision-making process.
We talking like first-round money? We talking like third or fourth round?
We're talking like where I'm projected, so third or fourth round money.
Okay, all right.
How smart was that by Cade Mays? Hey, I got a great opportunity to play in the pros, but if an NIL deal was to fall in my lap, and let's say it's third or fourth round money for an offensive lineman, then we can talk.
But offensive linemen aren't marketable.
Man, shut up, Darren Vrabel. What an idiot. What is he talking? That's still such a dumb tweet, especially at this university.
You don't know anything. You don't know squat, you stupid idiot.
Listen, let me not bash Darren Rovell, because he has made an excellent career for himself in the world of sports business, but to just come out there and flatly dismiss an entire position group as not marketable when there are plenty of marketable offensive linemen in this. In fact, they're the biggest. They're not just literally, but they are oftentimes the biggest personality on the football team. You could sell those guys anywhere. So dumb. I don't want to, Lucas, this is going to, my Tennessee geography be ignorance. It's scaring me. Where is Rick calling us from right now?
You tell me.
I can't. I don't want to disrespect people. I'm deathly afraid of this. No, I can't do it. Is it Culleoka? How have I just botched that? Oh, really? Rick is up next. What's happening, Rick?
Buck, it is indeed Culleoka. Culleoka is located just south of Columbia, Tennessee.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate the call, Rick. What you have for us today?
Very good. Man, I really enjoy your show. Quick question, and I'll hang up. I won't hang on to the debate because I don't have a clue to the answer. But my question to you is, I would really like your opinion on the present state of turmoil, so I consider it turmoil in college recruiting, Who do you think benefits most from this? Is it the same cast of characters, the Alabamas and Georgias and Ohio States, or does this possibly finally start to create which I think is unattainable, parity? So just a big mess. I don't have a clue to the answer. I'd like to get your opinion. Hang up and listen and enjoy the show. Thanks.
Hey, thanks so much for the call, Rick. I mean, it is exactly as you've just, you know the answer to this, Rick. I think you're just looking for something I think you're looking for something that other than what you know to be the truth in this situation. That of course it's gonna benefit the major superpowers in college football. Why do you think Texas and Oklahoma? I mean, and I'm just kind of speaking generally on this, Rick. It's the same reason that Texas and Oklahoma are coming to the SEC, because we have done away with the idea of parity and really scrubbed away the wholesome veneer of what college football is. No, this is now big business. It's always been big business, but now they've just stripped it down to the point where every executive in the world of college athletics is looking at this and saying, okay, kids are getting paid now. Let's just open the whole thing up. And the universities are going to benefit from this in major ways. And if you've got the best coach and the biggest budget for a coaching staff, and you have the finest facilities anywhere possible, and you have the biggest and baddest boosters to make sure that your kids get paid, by God, you're going to continue to succeed in the world of college football. But if you're one of these have-nots, the hill to climb just got a whole lot steeper. And I think, Rick, when Chris Childers came on here a couple of months ago, in the summer when we were talking about the name, image, and likeness legislation getting ready to be passed, and said, forget everything that you know about the world of college football, it's always been kind of like this, but now there's no way to avoid what it is exactly that we're looking at. And it may be turmoil, but there's money in that turmoil. And everybody who is financially invested in this sport smells it and is getting ready to take a bath. We'll come back and we'll continue this conversation. National Signing Day. What's happening with the University of Tennessee? We got the dumbest thing in sports as well, and a COVID outbreak among many, many NFL teams at this juncture. The Titans having a player placed on the COVID list yesterday, but no developments at this point as far as further infection. We'll keep you updated on all of those things coming up next in hour number 2. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 11:05. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica. National Signing Day continues on. Some big early news for Tennessee this morning. Four-star running back Justin Williams chose the Vols over Auburn, and four-star defensive lineman Tyree West choosing Tennessee over Florida State West, a former Georgia commit. The Vols did just miss on number one corner prospect out of junior college, Keontae Scott, who picks Auburn. Tennessee's class currently ranks 15th in the country in the 24/7 Sports Composite. Stay tuned to 104.5 The Zone all day for updates. And reportedly, Jackson State with head coach Deion Sanders has flipped the number one overall player in the country, Travis Hunter, the corner from Florida State, to Jackson State. A COVID outbreak has hit the NFL, over 75 positive tests in the last 2 days. The latest, Browns quarterback Baker Mayfield has tested positive, as well as head coach for the Browns, Kevin Stefanski. Titans wide receiver Dez Fitzpatrick placed on the COVID list on Tuesday. He joined safety Jamal Carter. Meanwhile, Titans return to the practice field at St. Thomas Sports Park today, preparing for a road trip to Pittsburgh on Sunday. Mike Vrabel meeting with the media at noon. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Hour number 2 on this National Signing Day. Welcome back to 104.5 The Zone. Buck Reising here with you. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to jump in, give your thoughts, your questions, your comments, and concerns about the class that Josh Heupel is successfully putting together at this juncture. 15th in the country. I think so far exceeding any expectations that you would have set. And it sounds like he's not the only one doing well today. Lucas, what's the latest on Vanderbilt's recruiting class? Because I want to make sure that we give the hometown team some love as well. What is the situation with Vanderbilt right now in Clark Lee's first attempt at this?
Up to 32nd in the country. Vanderbilt moving up at the moment. I'll try to get some specifics. They have taken away one prospect that was considering Vanderbilt versus Tennessee, but it's a good start for Clark Lee in his first ever full recruiting class.
Certainly. So we'll continue to keep track of these things throughout the course of today. And the latest on the Vols at this juncture, as we've talked about a few times this morning, that 17 total signees at this juncture. You have seen Tyree West and Justin Williams, defensive lineman, and running back, respectively, commit to the University of Tennessee is probably their biggest gets thus far. So something that was brought to my attention, because we'll do the dumbest thing in sports this hour as well, something that was brought to my attention that may end up being a nominee. Now, there's actually two regarding one former college football coach and one current college football coach, but let me start with the current one, shall I? Because he is definitely more invested in the success or failure of his recruiting. Dabo Swinney. This is a tweet from 247 Sports on Twitter. Dabo Swinney is not feeling this new era of college football. They tweet, do y'all agree? Quote, it's chaos right now. Tampering galore. Adults manipulating young men. Education is like the last thing now. All right. Here's how I'm going to handle this, because my first reaction is to say, Dabo, you've shot yourself in the foot because you're playing a game that nobody's playing anymore. There's a reason they're not playing that game anymore. It's because you'll lose if you're the one out here trumpeting education. Now, when I say that, it feels dirty coming out of my mouth because I've just outright dismissed education as part of the college football recruiting process. But at a university like Clemson, you have to decide. I mean, people like Brian Kelly already made this decision. Brian Kelly is not interested in the academics involved in Notre Dame's recruiting process. So you know where he went? He went to LSU, and he may look like a horse's ass because he's out here dancing out of rhythm, throwing up L's at LSU. He's hugely uncomfortable, and he has made multiple appearances where he has flat out embarrassed himself in his new job. And you know what? It doesn't matter because LSU is sitting on a recruiting gold mine in that state. And college football players, high school football players are going to continue to come to that place because of what LSU is capable of and how much in-state talent, how much that means to in-state talent to play for the LSU Tigers. So all of this, removing the veneer from it, it's not something that I want to act like it's not a big deal. But at a certain point in this world, there was a sacrifice made between what the value of a college degree at any of these universities is versus what that program may offer you if you're the best college football players in the country. If you think you're the top 1% of the top 1% that end up making the professional ranks, are you really going to be listening? Are you really going to take into consideration, rightly or wrongly, the coach who is still out here trumpeting, oh, I hate this new era of college football. Academics don't matter anymore. No, man, they stop mattering as soon as they stopped mattering long before this at places where they win at a high level in college football. And not just college football, college basketball. There are exceptions made for the best of the best to get them in. North Carolina just went through a massive, not just, but in the last couple of years just went through a massive scandal because of how fraudulent they were holding their academics up to be as far as athletics were concerned. It's been going on forever. Dabo knows that. He knows that. And I don't think he strikes me as a genuine person, so I don't want to be like, well, you're lying through your teeth, but how could you be so naive? Not ignorant, but naive.
Is holier than thou.
Which is his thing, right? Like that's who Dabo is. And if he wants to stick to his guns that way, that's fine. But if Nick Saban is capable of evolving this many times across the decades in this world, and you aren't, they're going to leave you in the dust. Lucas, Tennessee has a better recruiting class right now than Clemson, correct?
Correct. By one spot in the 247 Sports Composite.
If you're a Clemson fan, that's great. Tennessee Vols fans are probably hearing that, and I hope that everybody's driving safely, 10-2, but they're probably hearing that and swerving a little bit out of excitement. And Clemson fans are pissed. And I don't want to dismiss the value of a college education, but for the kinds of athletes that Dabo wants at Clemson and the kind of athletes that Brian Kelly wants at LSU and Nick Saban wants at Alabama and Notre Dame wants to get but can't get through because of the academic requirements, like you're not dealing in the value of a college education anymore. You just heard Cade Mays, if you were listening to the first hour of the show this morning, you just heard Cade Mays say, yeah, it's not about, in so many words. Yeah, maybe I have a shot at the pros. And maybe if there's an NIL deal good enough, lucratively, to bring me back to Tennessee in 2022, we're talking third or fourth round money. Yeah, we can talk business. Business, not education. They've leapfrogged it, rightly or wrongly. And hopefully for these college athletes, they've got enough, and, current high school athletes that will soon be in the middle of this mess. Hopefully they have somebody around them, and inevitably there will be some sob stories about this where things went very, very wrong for people from a financial standpoint because they're getting this kind of money very, very quickly at very young ages, and responsibility does not necessarily come with youth. I'm sure many of you would agree. So they're going to see some places where this goes very wrong, but in the meantime, this is too early on. There's no repercussions as far as these kids are concerned yet. They haven't had enough time to see them. 615-737-1045. Let's go to Wildcat in Mount Juliet. What's up, Wildcat?
Hey, Uncle Buck. It's been a minute. I heard you talk about Dabo and all that. A few years ago before the Rona hit, I used to work at University of Kentucky in the sports departments and stuff. And I would see the behind the scenes, like you see behind the scenes of the Titan stuff and everything. There's a lot of things you just don't talk about. But there's one thing that I found out that was a harsh reality in college sports when it comes to athletes. It is that they go there to play football, basketball, etc. That's their major. You know, that is why they go to a certain place for a certain coach, for a certain scheme, whatever, because that is their major. Their dreams aren't to play in college, as much as we want to believe that. Their dreams to make it to the NFL, like Cade Mays said, you know. So their major is their sport. That's what they go to school for. And if Dabo can't get on top, can't come to a realization of that, he's going to have a hard time at Clemson from now on. That's just my belief. But I'll hang up and listen. Buck, keep doing the good work, buddy.
Thanks for the call, Wildcat. Yeah, that's basically where Dabo's at. He shot himself in the foot on this, and this has been years in the making. He's had plenty of time to kind of adjust his train of thought. When we come back, we'll do the dumbest thing in sports. We'll take your phone calls on National Signing Day as well, and certainly in the dumbest thing of sports category. I think, do we both have college football coaches today?
I don't know. I'm on the fence between two things.
Spicy. That's a tease. That's next. We'll do the dumbest thing in sports here in just a second, as is the tradition on Wednesday, but we've had some shuffling parts because it's National Signing Day, and the transactions are flying rather quickly. Welcome back. Buck Reising here with you till 1 o'clock. You want to jump in on the conversation, 615-737-1045. We'll get to your phone calls here in just a second, but we have the first opportunity to use our commitment sound, our signee sound. Lucas, hit him with it.
I love Peyton Manning.
You're damn right, Bev Davenport. Who is signed to the University of Tennessee?
Four-star quarterback Taven Jackson, a longtime Tennessee commit, has put pen to paper.
Greenwood, Indiana, Center Grove High School. I remember this is one of those terrible high school football stories that nobody cares about except the person telling it. But when my high school was in the state championships, sophomore and junior year, Center Grove was always there, and they always had just the most giant human beings I've ever seen on a high school football field in my life. Taven Jackson, it's interesting the conversation around Tennessee's quarterbacks, right? Because as I told you on Monday, that was after in the middle of the Titans-Jags game, you had Hendon Hooker announcing his intent to return, or that he was going to return to the University of Tennessee. And I told you that basically the situation in Knoxville is that Hendon Hooker was exploring other opportunities, including potentially the NFL draft because of the weak status of the quarterback class this year, because he was not necessarily guaranteed the starting quarterback job at the University of Tennessee, which I'm sure many people thought was blasphemous. But it does open things up for Josh Heupel to find a better fit, even if what he had last year was surprisingly good. And it's not like Hendon Hooker is without talent, but I think that you don't want to marry yourself, especially in this sport, to one guy when the proposition of this is so year to year as you try and evolve this thing further and make it just a little bit better than it was this current season. So Taven Jackson will come in and he'll have the opportunity to compete, and we'll keep an eye on whether Tennessee has any interest in other quarterbacks that are out there transfer portal-wise with the plethora of guys that are available this year in the portal. Do the dumbest thing in sports here in just a second. Scott and Bethpage, though, is up first. What's up, my guy?
Hey, Buck, you there?
I sure am.
Buck, are you there?
Yes, hello.
All right, I just had to see how that felt. Okay. All right.
Scott, why are you a troll?
It feels, I'm not going to lie, it feels weird because I want to talk.
Oh, and now your phone line sucks. This is karma, Scott. You've mocked.
Oh, no.
You've
Are
mocked.
you there? I will stop dead. I'm stopped in the middle of the road, interstate. Here we are.
Okay.
Okay, I'm here. You're there, and I'm here. It feels awful, guys. We got to continue to do a better job of this. Okay, Luke. First of all, you are forgiven for leaving the Ole Miss game. If you skip school for National Signing Day, you are back in my top two.
Every year of high school, Scott.
Devotion.
And I don't think you're leaving. I don't think you're leaving the top two after that. So I'm a little confused. I can't understand why Walter Nolan has signed with Jimbo in A&M. I can understand Bama, Georgia, maybe even LSU. It just looks like he would fit that mold there a little bit better of those big three. But I don't understand A&M because A&M, even though they have these wonderful recruiting classes that they have, they just tend to choke. And so I don't understand why he would go there. He would fit so much better at the big three, or I think he would even fit at Tennessee better. With Rodney Garner, it never has made sense to me. So I'm hoping it's not done, or he comes back to us at some point. But I'm so proud of our coach, how he's done. He handles the media well. He handles his players well. He handles his coaching staff well. He deals good with the fans. He is everything that we have needed in a coach for the last 2 years. And now he's showing that he can get it done on the recruiting trail. What were we starting out, 30th? Close to 30th, 28th, something like that?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we got to give him some props. The dude has done nothing but improve since day one he got here. So, thanks, guys, as always. I've missed you, Buck. God, I love you guys, but I've missed you so much. I've missed you more than I love you. So, hey, glad you're back home from Egypt. Hope you had a wonderful trip in the motherland, and you guys have a good rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Scott. Love you too, buddy. So, Lucas tells me that Walter Nolan is scheduled to sign at 3 p.m. today. Central or Eastern?
3 Central.
3 Central. Okay, so Walter Nolan, the number one recruit in the country, defensive lineman who has been playing high school football in Knoxville in the last calendar year, and who it seemed like, even when we talked to Tom Luganbill yesterday about Walter Nolan, it seemed like Tennessee still thought there was wiggle room for them to make a push. Now, how realistic that is with, 3.5 hours to go at this point, I don't necessarily know. But I will say to you that I think A&M obviously has some appeal because they are the number 2 recruiting class in the country right now. That's a big part, not just they're selling, they're trafficking in hope, right? They're selling these recruits on the idea that look at how many talented prospects we already have here. You, Walter Nolan, or whomever else, can be a part of something special. Look at Jimbo saying that he refuses to leave the Texas A&M job. He'd be a fool to leave the Texas A&M job because then he would have to coach potentially against the class that he's just recruited. And he's very, very proud of his number 2 recruiting class. So I don't disagree with you, Scott. But perception, and I do think that there is a perception around, Jimbo Fisher is a national champion, and nobody can take that from him. Jimbo Fisher is the only former assistant of Nick Saban to defeat Nick Saban, and he's certainly the coach of the first unranked team to defeat Alabama in a long, 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 long time. So there are things there that have promise, but I think that on the whole, like the full body of work from Jimbo Fisher, I would say that you probably would often accuse of their teams underachieving, even if they were in it, certainly in the Jameis Winston era, and you've seen how downhill things have gone since Jimbo left Florida State. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Walter Nolan and if there's any kind of seismic shift in the next couple of hours or so. But at this point, he is on pace to sign with with Texas A&M at 3 p.m. So we'll continue to keep you updated on that. Let's do the dumbest thing in sports, shall we?
Let's be honest. You've already seen something this week that made you say,
"What the is this?"
That's bullshit.
What the hell? Give me some more now.
Something so mind-numbingly idiotic that you just want to get it off your chest.
Dumber than a second coat of paint.
Some idiot.
You are really dumb. For real. It's the dumbest thing in sports this week on the Buck Reising Show.
615-737-1045. We'll do an abbreviated version of the dumbest thing in sports because we want to get back to National Signing Day, but this is what we do on Wednesdays. And it happens to have a college football tint to it. 615-737-1045. Oh, maybe not. Breaking news. Titans have just designated Bud Dupree to return to practice off of injured reserve. Massive news in the middle of the dumbest thing in sports this week. I'm going to have to speak out my tweet right now because I cannot, unless you want to stall for me, Lucas, while I do this.
I will stall something for you with another slight bit of breaking news that Barstool Sports and Penn National Gaming have reached a deal with number 1 player in the country, Travis Hunter, that is rumored to be in the millions. Of course, who just flipped to Jackson State over Florida State.
Yep. That's massive news. Bud Dupree. All right, so we've just had a flurry of news. Damn, I was really trying to find a spot to fit the dumbest thing in sports this week, but now it seems that we've been derailed. Should we continue on and should we talk about Bud Dupree? This is the news, but I suppose we will do the dumbest thing in sports as we sit here today. But I will tell you that there have been updates. There's a full list of transactions that the Titans have just emailed us about, along with Bud Dupree. So at this point, they have signed defensive back Nate Brooks to the team's practice squad. Bud Dupree has been designated to return from injured reserve, which opens up the 21-day window for his return. And then Breon Borders, as John Glennon reported yesterday, he has officially been removed from the team's practice squad. He was signed by the Arizona Cardinals on Tuesday. Massive, massive development as the Titans prepare to play Bud Dupree's former team. the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, the dumbest thing in sports this week. Let's do it quickly since we're here. The dumbest thing in sports this week, from my perspective, I don't know how Lucas feels about this, but Gene Chizik. Gene Chizik, who is now an SEC Network analyst, who is himself a national championship winning coach, and then very quickly in Ed Orgeron style fashion. Now, not necessarily, I don't know what was going on in the personal life of Gene Chizik in the way that Ed Orgeron's was fairly public, but they got him out at Auburn really quick after the Cam Newton experience came and went. So he is on social media this week spitting out hot takes about NIL. And he is saying, I'll read you the exact tweet, at Coach Gene Chizik. Every scholarship offensive lineman at UT, is he talking about Tennessee? When he says UT, is he talking about Texas or Tennessee here? It's a good question.
Don't believe it's Tennessee.
Okay, I'm just going to read the tweet. I don't think it's Tennessee that he's talking about. Anyway, every scholarship offensive lineman at UT will get $50,000 a year with the new NIL deal, not to mention the $200,000 education. Americans struggle finding $50,000 jobs to feed their children. Next, it's $100,000 a player with no end in sight. Flawed system, most money wins, and this is what is the cherry on top of the Gene Chizik cake. He ends his tweet, his grand proclamation, his knowledge that he's dispersed to the public with hashtag words of chisdom. Gene Chizik, I'm not going to call you an idiot, but you are displaying the behavior of somebody who is an idiot. To try and compare the name, image, and likeness situation among college athletes to the American economy right now is among the most, it's frankly to me just propaganda. You have players responding to this in ways, and if you want to jump in, 615-737-1045, you have players responding to this in a way that is laugh out loud funny. There are coaches making millions of dollars a year, and Gene Chizik is not discussing his situation, his financial situation, how much he made off of the backs of the players. Can you imagine what Cam Newton would have made in NIL money? Is Gene Chizik financially threatened by the idea that players could out-earn the coaches? Man, what in the world are you doing when you press send on that tweet? Words of chisdom? All you're doing is exposing yourself to why this was so important to push through legally and why it was ruled fundamentally illegal to deprive college athletes of the ability to earn money off of their name, image, and likeness, because people like Gene Chizik are trying to keep it status quo. And he is so off base. There is a reason, Gene, that you sit on a television set as opposed to being a coach. Now, maybe you are doing it for personal decisions, but Gene Chizik's coaching career ended very, very quickly, and nobody has been terribly interested in bringing him back. You want to make sure you don't come back? Put that out there into the universe, unless you're just trying to get dragged on Twitter for the sake of attention, because you sure as hell did. That's the dumbest thing in sports this week. What you got, Lucas?
Mine's a bit of a departure from National Signing Day because we have not talked about this new movie starring Kevin James as Sean Payton.
Oh, my God.
Coming out on Netflix. What's the movie
that commercial.
called?
Oh, I don't know what the movie's called.
Home Team.
About the time that Sean Payton was suspended because of Bountygate.
Bountygate. And it seems to be a kid's movie. So you struggle with it because it's like that Space Jam 2 conversation, right? Like, oh, it was terrible. Well, it's not for you. It's for children. Just like Space Jam 1 was for children, and you loved it when you were a child. So I have that kind of discussion in my head. Like, is it fair to call this the dumbest thing in sports this week when it's clearly not targeted towards me? But let me just play this 5-second clip from the start of the trailer.
Hey, Coach. Mr. Goodall is on the phone?
Roger Goodell's on the phone. The commissioner.
Mr. Goodall is on the phone? An employee of the New Orleans Saints who doesn't know who the commissioner of the NFL is. And a children movie made about one of the worst scandals in modern NFL history is my dumbest thing in sports this week. Who's playing Greg Williams? Who gets the line, if you kill the head, the body will die? That's what I want to know.
Do you think that made it into the movie? If you
No
kill
chance.
the head,
You
the
think
body
they even
will
mention
die.
why? Do they even mention why he's suspended? I mean, it's a nice story about Sean Payton being suspended and then coaching his son's like 6th grade football team. That's terrible. But I want to know if they include that in the movie.
It's so. I saw that this commercial ran during Monday Night Football, right? Like, because I think that's the first place that I saw it, and I think I had the same reaction as everybody. Like, what the hell is this? I mean, Netflix is. People are going to watch it just to see if it's a train wreck. Like, sports people are going to watch it, and it's going to carry weight, and then it's going to be like a car crash. Either way, people are going to go just to see how bad it is.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I don't got anything against Kevin James. I liked the movie Grown Ups. I enjoyed it. What's the show he had with Leah Remini? I used to watch it all the time.
Queens?
King of Queens. I liked King of Queens. It was a
great.
good show. I got nothing against Kevin James.
No, Kevin James, though, the first bad decision was Mall Cop, and everything since then.
Saw the movie in theaters.
Paul Blart. I remember watching that and being like, okay, I'm officially out of the phase where this is not funny. To
But
me
what's
anymore.
worse? What's going to be worse, that or American Underdog about Kurt Warner?
Oh, I feel like Titans fans are just not going to see American Underdog out of protest. The story of Kurt Warner and the miraculous Super Bowl win, Kevin Dyson 1 yard short. I wanted to ask because I remember that I saw the trailer for the first time on TV while we were interviewing Mike Keith, and I wanted to ask Mike about it. I'm like, Mike, will you boycott that movie? Like, will you?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's going to be terrible, but
it looks really
either way, the Mr. Goodall is on the phone infuriated me, and I don't care who it's intended for as far as a target audience. It's my dumbest thing in sports this week.
All right, let's get to some phone calls before we talk about Bud Dupree, because if you're just now joining us, the Titans outside linebacker has been designated to return off of IR. It now opens up a 21-day window for the team to activate him to the 53-man roster. We go to Darrington first on the dumbest thing in sports. What's up?
I just want to know, just let this be known that I say this out of all love, and no matter what, I still love you, Buck. Well, my dumbest thing in sports is Buck Reising.
Oh!
But once again, taking up for mediocre quarterbacks. Yesterday on your show, and I didn't make no comment about it, you said Baker Mayfield was a good quarterback. Oh, my gosh, I have never seen such a first-round, number one pick be such a bust. He's had one good season, and he only had a stretch of 11 games where he was good. Right now, Baker Mayfield has a 39% QBR, which ranks 26. Once again, he is mediocre poor, same as when I made the reference of Ryan Tannehill. Numbers don't lie, Buck, and on that one, you did. Love you.
Thanks, buddy. I'll be the dumbest thing in sports this week. I think Baker Mayfield's fine. I just think he's super hurt right now. I don't think, like, the numbers are – I think he's cost himself more money than anybody in professional football this year because he's playing through injury, and that looks unwise because he doesn't appear to be that much. Who's his backup right now? Is it still Case Keenum?
Yes.
All right. When we come back, we'll talk about Bud Dupree. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back. Lucas is playing dangerously, playing with fire with some 3-6 Mafia on FCC Radio. You've hated that very quickly because I know what comes after.
You never know.
Where's the bud? Juicy J asks. We found him. He's designated to return from injured reserve. This is the latest news. If you're just now joining us from the Titans, they sent out a transaction email including Bud Dupree being designated to return from IR so he can resume practice. It could go. We don't know what the time frame will be. I'm sure that Mike Vrabel, whose press conference will carry coming up next, given that they have just that they have just designated Bud to return as opposed to activating him. So we'll carry Mike's press conference coming up next before we're joined by Bridget Condon of the NFL Network because it's probably outside of National Signing Day, it may be the biggest story in sports right now. What's happening with COVID-19 in the NFL? There were 76 players as of 7 p.m. last night that had tested positive for COVID-19 in the past 2 days in the league. There were 7 facilities that had shut down and gone virtual, 7 different NFL franchises. We'll get the updated number for you here in just a second, but we'll transition to that later in the show. For Bud Dupree, this is huge news, of course. This opens up the 3-week window for him to return to the team. He will not count against the active roster until such time, and this is dealing with the abdominal injury, if you'll recall, right? He played 1 snap in that game. Which game? Which was the last game that Bud Dupree played? Okay, that was against the Saints on November 14th. He has since missed the 3 games. So at that point, Bud Dupree and the Titans pass rush this was a big part of their 6-game winning streak, right? Bud Dupree, for all of the scrutiny that was on him and the way that he was touted, or the way that I think fans held him up as the expectation that Bud Dupree is going to save the Titans pass rush. And it's been a combination of Bud, Danico Autry, Jeff Simmons, Harold Landry, some guys in the mix like Ola Adeniyi as well, Laurel Murchison, Naquan Jones. Like, there's a bunch of different guys that have gotten involved because the Titans have some depth there this season. But Bud Dupree is a big piece of this. Not necessarily when you look at the sack totals because he hasn't played in a ton of games this year, but he is very effective at disrupting the quarterback, and this abdominal injury was feared to be something more serious, and it's good that it only took him these 3 games plus the bye, so about a month at this point, just over a month at this point, since he was injured and since he has been able to return to practice. Now, he'll be monitored this week at practice, and they will keep an eye on him just as they did with Julio Jones and Dane Cruikshank and Racey McMath last week. Those 3 guys participated in practice in some form or fashion all 3 days last week. Then they were activated to the roster on Saturday before the game. Racey and Julio definitely participated in the game. I can't recall if Cruikshank got snaps, but I will look up his snap count later on. This is something to keep in mind. It's the opportunity for revenge for Bud Dupree. And what's going to be interesting when the injury report comes out around 3 o'clock today, 3 o'clock Central Time. So Vols fans will be watching Walter Nolan, and they'll be watching the injury report if you're a Titans fan, because the status of T.J. Watt for Pittsburgh is very much up in the air. The Steelers are a much different defense. They're working with a lot of backup defensive linemen already, and without T.J. Watt, that becomes a little more perilous. They look like a much different defense, and Minnesota was able to run all over them at great length. If you want to jump in on the conversation, the number is 615-737-1045, reacting to the news that Bud Dupree has been cleared to return to practice just a few minutes ago. What that means for the Titans heading into Pittsburgh this weekend. I'll travel on Saturday to Pittsburgh. I've never been. It's going to be an interesting environment to see a Steelers game at Heinz Field in December. I think is going to be a really, really good test of what this Titans team is capable of doing. And, of course, we'll do the Lee Company countdown to kickoff before the game, starting at 9 a.m. Central Time with yours truly, before your live and local coverage continues all throughout the course of the game with Blaine Bishop, with Mickey Ryan, with Kevin Dyson, of course, Mike Keith, Coach Mack, and the whole Titans radio crew on Sundays. It's a big deal to be able to get him back at this juncture, and something that we're going to continue to monitor all week long. In fact, I'm going to go to practice today right after the show concludes. They will open up practice at 1:20, so I'll be able to scoot on over to St. Thomas Sports Park from our studios here on Music Row and make sure that I am able to see what Bud Dupree looks like out there. 615-737-1045. When we come back, though, you're going to hear from Titans head coach Mike Vrabel. And certainly there's going to be a number of things that he has to address with Bud Dupree potentially back in the mix, and as far as the rest of the progress with this football team is concerned. And really what I want to know from Mike is how they plan to, how much of their offensive struggles on Sunday against the Jags were dictated by the fact that it seems that they chose a fairly conservative game plan, given that they needed one touchdown. They needed 6 points, and they ended up with 20. They needed simply a touchdown. Hell, they could have won that game with a field goal because the Jags had 0 points. I award you 0 points for your effort, and may God have mercy on your soul, Mr. Meyer. We'll also keep you updated with the latest on National Signing Day as well. Lucas is back there with his Beverly Davenport sounder to let you know when the next Tennessee recruit has signed, and it'll be a great time. Final hour. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Show's moving fast on this Wednesday. Welcome back to 104.5 The Zone. Get back to some National Signing Day conversation later on, but right now, Bud Dupree has been designated to return to the Titans practice field, and Mike Vrabel is at the podium answering questions right now.
Everything that we have to do to try to protect and keep ourselves healthy, our families healthy, and this football team healthy. It's we're all conscious of the spike in the numbers. We'll keep a close contact. We'll keep a close eye on the close contacts and do everything that they're supposed to be doing, and try to do everything that we can to keep everybody safe.
Some teams were told to intensify the protocols. Obviously, you guys weren't, but have you had any thoughts about, intensifying that within the building?
No, the only thoughts I've had on is just trying to prepare for the Steelers and get this team ready.
And how tough is he to get down if you do get pressure on him?
Well, I think we've all seen his success late in the game. Just his ability to move them down and score quickly. I know that that's not where they would want to have been, but it says a lot about him, his offense. They're very, very good skilled players. The receivers are all good. The running back is exceptional. They've had some moving pieces with the O-line, but I think Ben makes it all go. Very good down the field, very, very good deep ball thrower. He's going to take shots, and they've done a great job of coming down with him or creating a penalty. Really good technique down the field. And then he's still strong. I mean, he's not like he was when he was younger, but I mean he's still big, and if you fall on the ground, it's going to be tough to tackle him.
I have a question from Teresa. She wants to know how good is it to be in a position potentially to clinch the division this weekend if things fall correctly for you?
Haven't given that much thought. It is our weekly approach to try to figure out how we prepare to win and ultimately win on Sunday, and then we'll move on to the next one. And if things happen, then I guess that's great. But we're really just trying to focus on having a great day today.
The frequency or the variety of their blitzes on defense that are a bigger concern?
Probably, probably just the variety. I mean, I think that there's different packages, there's different fronts, where they move some of these outside linebackers around and where they put them, and some of the stuff that they do. It may probably look unorthodox at times, but it's very sound, a very aggressive approach.
Cumulative effect on Ryan from the hits that he takes, both physically and mentally at this stage of the season?
I wouldn't know how to answer that.
Can you speak to what Najee Harris has done for them this year and what he brings?
Well, they, I noticed in the Ravens game when they needed to come back and had a huge drive there in the fourth quarter, handed it to him, threw it to him, checked down, and the workload doesn't seem to have bothered him. The one thing that probably impresses me the most about him is on the mistakes that they have made, whether that's, an interception. He's the one that's out there and it's at the front of the pack trying to chase down the guy with the ball. So he's playing with great effort. There were times he was breaking tackles. Really runs behind his pads, has good balance, catches the ball very well. Naturally easy. So we'll have to, again, go into the game with the idea of trying to stop him. And then when Snell's in there, obviously he's a physical player who isn't afraid of contact.
With their red zone offense, I think it's their tops in the league as far as passing the football. What stands out to you, as far as some of the things they do, especially even like in low red zone specifically?
They've got a few different, the different players that they have different skill sets. You have Claypool who can go up and get the football. You find him a lot, around the back of the end zone and in the corners. I think Deontay Johnson is one of the best just natural route runners that we have or that we'll face the entire season. He's sudden. He's tough to bring down after short gains, and he does a great job of stemming routes at the second level. and then Washington plays with really good play strength, and Freiermuth is more of a, along the lines of Claypool. They put him on the backside and throw him one-on-one versus a corner, so that tells you what they think about him.
Get Bud back at practice. Is this one of those just responding, see how he responds throughout the week situations?
Yeah, I think that's been what we've done all along with everybody that has come off of, we're pretty used to this now after this return to play, and, see where he is and see how he responds and then make a decision, going into the weekend.
I feel like the offensive line's done with the lack of continuity with guys coming in and out, in-game, game to game.
I think that there's been some really, really good moments. I think that there's some, I don't think it's been a complete, breakdown. I think that there's been, missed blocks, pass protection, mistakes. But they've had some really, really good performances, and I'm confident that, we just have to stop having it be one person each and every time. And I believe that. It's not coach speak. We can show you on the film whether it's talking about the offensive line, whether one time is Taylor, or one time it's Quiz, one time it's Roger, one time it's somebody different. Just like maybe a back misses a cut, maybe a receiver doesn't run a great route, and that's football. That's offensive football. That it's going to take all 11 guys doing their job to execute.
Now that you have the 5 guys that you started the season with back and relatively healthy,
How do you know how healthy they are?
Well, they're
relatively healthy. Like, I'm just curious how you know that.
They're healthy enough to play.
Yeah. Okay.
So, because I know you always talk about nobody's 100%.
You're right.
But having those guys back and playing together, how much can that help you down the stretch?
I think continuity, especially at that group, but you look at any type where there's a defensive line and maybe that's the same guys talking about running games. They get, the same guy that they're running a game with. They start to build some continuity on how they're supposed to do it or how they're doing it. Offensive line is probably the most critical position to have that relationship of making calls on the fly. A defensive lineman slides over, 2 feet and calls change. And so that has to happen really quickly, and hopefully the guys playing together can make that happen quicker. Protections change. Whether Ryan or Ben changes the protection and making sure that everybody's on the same page. And then, even more so than being on the same page is just, making sure that we block our guy. That's the most important thing for a lineman.
What are some of the biggest pluses that Julio Jones, a relatively healthy Julio Jones brings to the line?
I mean, anybody that's, out there, I think he's, he's willing to block for us when we run the football, or if somebody else has it. Ryan scrambled, and Julio did a great job of high screening the guy, and whether he would made the play on Ryan or not down on the goal line, I don't know. But there's a guy that we had coached the high screen not to come back and drill the guy and get a blindside block, and so that was good to see. He catches it in traffic. He's not afraid to catch it in traffic. We have to find ways to continue to try to get him the football. We talked about that after the game, and. But he's got really good size, and I think last week was good to get him going here a little bit in practice, and hopefully this week he'll be a little better.
There was a post that he ran in the third quarter, I think it was, and he seemed to get behind the secondary, but the pressure kind of knocked Tannehill out of the pocket. But how important is it to get those type of deep opportunities to show that he can still do that?
Will always be. I mean, the more that you can back guys up, the more chances that you have. It's tough to play with 11 guys at within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage.
Ryan mentioned after the game, the next step within Julio to be building off of what happened on Sunday. How much is Julio's availability throughout the rest of the season key to that as he continues to try to be out there and the offense tries to build?
Can only throw to the guys that are out there, can only hand it off to the guys that are out there. I know that he's focused on today and where we are with the game plan on our first and second down against Pittsburgh.
To sort of become a bigger factor in the passing game this year?
probably, for the most part, catch the ones that we throw. I know he'd like to have the one back the other day, and whether it's on our boot game or made a nice play on with the screen the other day. On our tight ends. Their number one job here will be to block. That's the first thing. Make sure we're doing that a little better, and then catch the ones we throw you.
I feel like, even without Derek in there, you guys have achieved kind of a consistency in a running game especially these past 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's probably fair to say. I think there was a lot more out there on Sunday. We'll have to be better this week against an excellent defense. Excellent run defense. And, they play with great technique. So we'll have to get into them, and it's going to take a great effort to run the football. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the weather.
Mike Vrabel wrapping things up before the Titans take the practice field for the first time this week. Bud Dupree cleared to practice today. And I'll be putting out videos of if he's physically out there and going through individual drills as we expect him to be. I'll have some videos for you available on social media because I'm going to be able to make it to practice since they're out on the field at 1:20 today. We will continue. And what Mike also touched on was the COVID protocols, and we'll have that audio for you before we are joined by our next guest of the NFL Network to discuss what's happening across the NFL. Not just in the NFL, by the way, locally. This situation, you heard Mike Vrabel speak to it, and now you have seen the Nashville Predators put out a statement from their official team Twitter account. The Preds announced today that the team has 6 players and 6 members, so 12 people total, of its traveling party in the COVID-19 protocol. The NFL has been awash in positive COVID cases. Mike Vrabel spoke to that, and our next guest, Bridget Condon, who does reporting for the NFL Network out in Los Angeles, is going to join us to discuss this because it seems like things got started with the Rams this weekend. That's on the other side. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
And the possible adjustments, Judy, there's a lot of possibilities, a lot of options. Could go to extensive protocols like the league did last year with virtual meetings and masks and the entire plan basically from last December that got them through the end of the season, got them through the playoffs. Part of the other thing, Tom, is many of the players who have tested positive are fully vaccinated, asymptomatic, and what do you do with those issues? What does that mean? And that's certainly some of the discussions that are going on here to try to figure out where the league is with these protocols that were developed without a vaccine. Now there is a vaccine, and a lot of the players are asymptomatic, so what do you do with that? I think we're going to get, as Judy mentioned, some more news over the next day or so, but certainly does feel like a very important time for the league as far as its handling of COVID. And the
and Ben Harper are the 6 players placed on or put into the COVID protocol by the Nashville Predators. The 6 members of the traveling party on the list are John Hines, assistant coach Dan Lambert, Todd Richards, and goaltending coach Ben Vanderlock. So they are supposed to play the Preds their next game tomorrow at Bridgestone Arena. But as we're getting ready to discuss with Bridget Condon of the NFL Network, our next guest, the Nashville Predators here locally, 12 people, 6 players, 6 people in the traveling party placed in the COVID protocol. Bridget joins us now on 104.5 The Zone. Bridget, this seems to be going crazy in the NFL as far as the positivity rate is concerned, and I know you're based out of L.A. covering the Rams pretty closely. What is it like there on the ground, and what's being discussed in terms of this professional football situation?
Yeah, it seems like this all happened right away, right? We were preparing for Monday night, big matchup between the Rams and Cardinals, and the Rams announced that 2 key players in tight end Tyler Higbee and one of their other players, Jalen Ramsey, were put on this COVID list just hours before the game. And it kind of threw a shockwave, and then they get back from Arizona, and 9 more are added. And Matthew, when we spoke with Sean McVay yesterday, he said, I think more are going to come. So it is really interesting, and as we've seen today, more and more tests from around the league are returning positive. And I think it's just this time right now that we're seeing this wave across all sports. I know you were just talking about the NHL. I used to work in Raleigh covering the Hurricanes, and their game last night got canceled. So we are in this time period where we thought we were over this, right? And it seems like another wave is upon us.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, this is something I was on the Titans bye week. I was traveling out of the country when this Omicron variant situation arose, and I made it back just in time before the travel restrictions were put in place. So it seems like this is not just relegated to the world of sports, but sports at this point is the context that we're talking about it through. Bridget Condon of the NFL Network is here with us. At Bridget Condon _ is where you can follow her on Twitter. So from that standpoint, Bridget, we just played a clip from your colleague Ian Rappaport, talking about the potential changes to the COVID-19 protocol, the discussions ongoing between the league and the NFLPA right now. With the rate of positivity, not just with the Rams in LA, but across this, what are you hearing as far as those conversations are concerned, and how likely is a change as we try and work through not just with professional athletics, but societally, the idea of booster shots and the emphasis on them?
Yeah, I will say the one positive thing about this go-around with COVID than this time last year is most players are vaccinated, right? And so even Sean McVay told us yesterday that all the guys who have tested positive are feeling fine. We saw Jalen Ramsey post on Twitter, he was in the gym. So they're working out, which to me says they're feeling fine, which is great news. And Tyler Higbee, after that one day on the list, he's already activated. So the interesting thing is these guys could play Sunday, right? They only need those 2 negative tests if they're vaccinated. And I do think we will see booster implications coming. I'm not sure, with the playoffs right around the corner and the Super Bowl, how quickly they can require that. But I do think definitely by next season, the booster shot will be highly recommended for these players. And it'll be something that maybe we deal with every year. But I do know right now things are going to change.
It's so, I mean, there's so many questions and so few answers, Bridget, and it feels like that's been the case for, the better part of a year and a half at this point with all of the things that COVID has brought about that require these changes. And I'm wondering at this point, there was an article put out on Pro Football Talk earlier this morning about the idea, could asymptomatic players that have tested positive potentially be able to play in games? I don't know how tenable a conversation that is, but do you sense, based on the team that you cover and the league at this point, do you think that there's a sense that could potentially be a part of the conversation moving forward?
I think anything is open for conversation right now. This is such a world that we're navigating, so many things that we've never dealt with before, right? Like we're talking about COVID now as if it's second nature, but we didn't even have that word in our vocabulary 2 years ago, right? So I think conversations are going to continue. I personally don't think a positive player at this point or in these playoffs or at this Super Bowl would be able to play, just because it's not just the NFL, right? It's the CDC and it's everything. It's not just these athletes, it's their families and staffers that are working games you all have to consider that, right? So I think that's a conversation. I personally don't think that would happen right now.
Bridget Condon of the NFL Network is our guest. Thursday Night Football, of course, continues this week with Chiefs-Chargers on Fox, the NFL Network, and Amazon Prime Video. The Chiefs dealing with their own COVID situation at this juncture as well, so it'll be interesting to see how that continues to develop. Bridget, I appreciate you spending some time. Before we get you out of here, you went viral the other day. I don't know how much of our audience necessarily knows that here in Nashville, Tennessee, but they've certainly seen the clip of you interviewing Cooper Kupp on the sideline and the way that he, as it would have happened to anybody on the sidelines, he seemed to melt your face off with football terminology in response to a question about how well he performed. What was it like to kind of go through that in real time? Because I cover the Titans here locally, and I know if a player had done that to me, I would have had to take a second to kind of process exactly what he was explaining to me.
So what's funny is before we even began the interview, we were having some problems with audio. So we were kind of waiting there for a couple minutes, and I was trying to make it less awkward for him. And I actually said to him off camera, I was like, so sorry about the wait. It just says how good of a guy he is, right, to stay there and wait around while we figure out some technical difficulties, because most guys would have ran into the locker room. So he waited, and I kind of made a joke to him and was like, hey, this just gives you more time to give me a really good answer, which is so funny looking back on it that he gave me that answer. But, people were like, you should have followed up. I actually had the PR guy, in the corner of my eye wrapping me up because it was my third question. So, at that point I was like, wow, I definitely want to listen back to what he said, because taking it all in for the first time, I was like, okay, we need to break this down and actually figure out exactly what it is he just said. But he's incredible, such a good guy, such a smart guy. My producer actually was like, he gives those answers to people all the time. For whatever reason, this one just caught and went viral. You never know with the internet.
At Bridget Condon _ is where you can follow her on the internet with all of the great work that she's doing for the NFL Network as a host and reporter. Bridget, thank you for the time and for the information. We appreciate you stopping by.
I appreciate it. Good luck to you the rest of the season as well.
Yeah, everybody's just trying to finish at this point, so we'll see how it goes. Take care, Bridget. Bridget Condon of the NFL Network with us on 104.5 The Zone. So, Lucas, if you can, while we're having this conversation, if you can pull that clip of Mike Vrabel talking about the way that things are being handled in the league right now and what measures the Titans have, if any, taken to kind of respond to this. Ryan Tannehill's currently on SportsCenter right now. I'm curious as to what he's saying. Of course, he's been speaking at the podium on Monday, as is his custom. I'll see if I can't turn things up in the studio to see exactly what he's breaking down, and we'll see if we can't get some of that for you as well. Oh, talking about just the general state of the offense at this point, and Des Fitzpatrick testing positive. So there's something that's going to be interesting to watch. They're breaking down the race for the AFC, the playoff seed. The Patriots number one, or the chances for the number one seed, 47%. Titans are second with a 26% shot. At the top spot in the conference, Chiefs in third at 17%. Winners of 6 straight all of a sudden. This was Mike Vrabel speaking about the situation that the NFL is going through with more positive COVID cases and how the Titans specifically are taking that into account.
I mean, we report, we ask guys to report symptoms. We follow the protocols, exactly the way they're laid out for us. We talked and mentioned to the team this morning just about, everything that we have to do to try to protect and keep ourselves healthy, our families healthy, and this football team healthy. It's, we're all conscious of the spike in the numbers. We'll keep a close contact. We'll keep a close eye on the close contacts and do everything that they're supposed to be doing, and try to do everything that we can to keep everybody safe.
Some teams.
So what Tehran goes on to ask him there is that some teams have already shut things down as far as the situation is concerned. That was Mike Vrabel that you just heard of. What Tehran asks him there is, have you taken any consideration into putting additional COVID protocols in place, given that other teams have already done so? This was Mike Vrabel's response.
No, the only thoughts I've had on is just trying to prepare for the Steelers and get this team ready.
Which is all well and good at this point, right? Like, until there's a problem. And this is because my first reaction to some of this stuff was, it's everything is so reactive regarding COVID. And I think that's where a lot of frustrations come, whether it's from a football coach, whether it's from somebody who is just now, or in recent months, in recent weeks, however the case may be, whether you're just now returning to your office space, if you've been working virtually. The rules have changed and the situation changes almost, every 2 weeks, it feels like. It seems we're having to make some new adaptation to what COVID is doing societally, not just in the world of sports. And so that's probably the greatest source of frustration when you're given one set of guidelines and then all of a sudden in 2 weeks or 10 days or however long the guidelines change. I understand why people struggle with that. It's struggling to change is probably – struggles with change are probably the things that bother people the most, just on a general basis. Now with COVID, it was my position, kind of the way that I looked at this thing initially, is that why is everything so reactive? Why are proactive measures not taken to make sure that they can stave the future potential of something like this happening? Because when Mike responds flatly, no, I'm preparing for the Steelers, as opposed to putting enhanced protocols in place, my initial thought would be, well, would it not seem wise to do so? And maybe, it's easy to do the analysis in retrospect, and certainly I'm not juggling all the things of managing an NFL football team the way that Mike Vrabel is, so that might be an easy position for me to take just at first glance. I do think, though, that there is some merit to, hey, we can only, I can't believe I'm going to say this, we can only control the things that we can control, right? The most cliche of the football cliches.
And got to play better and got to coach better.
Well, there's that too. He's not, listen, if you'd have bet the under on got to play better, got to coach better this season, Mike Vrabel's making you some money, because he has avoided his favorite phrase.
I've heard it once. Only once.
I think I've heard a version of it. It may not be the exact word for word, but there is some version of play better, coach better in Mike Vrabel's press conferences. Now, they've only lost 4 games this year, so that makes it a little easier to avoid the playing better and the coaching better. But regarding COVID, here's my thing, right? There is no way to predict how this situation is going to go. And so just like kind of the reaction, because I was overseas at the time that the Omicron reporting started to come out about the newest COVID variant and the measures that countries around the world were taking to kind of stave it off. And now, as you've seen, it's very much in the United States, in the United Kingdom, it's in South Africa, it's all across the globe. And so while I was, keeping track of this while I was overseas, because I wanted to make sure that I could get back into the country, of course, the thing that I kind of observed from afar is that the reaction to this was so overblown because we all, you go doomsday scenario as soon as you hear new COVID variant, right? And that's not the best way to approach this. I think that's where a lot of the shock and outrage that it brings about is born out of, well, let's just take a step back and let's kind of analyze this thing in real time. Let's get the information, as much information as humanly possible, before we decide how much or how little to react to this thing. And so I think that's the proper approach at this juncture for the NFL. But if nothing else, at least as Bridget brought up, Bridget Condon of the NFL Network, who just joined us, what Bridget brought up is that they have at least had some form of a plan in place, whereas last year it was very much, hey, we're just kind of learning as we go on this thing. So what measures they end up implementing with the playoffs a month away and the Super Bowl less than 2 months away? Think about that. With the possibility that COVID could knock star players out in the middle of not just playoffs, but playoff chases for teams trying to jockey for position. At this point, when you're just seeing on SportsCenter, if you're watching TV as I am in the studio right now, where they're talking about the probability for each team at the top of the AFC, the Patriots, Titans, and Chiefs, to get the top seed and to clinch that first round bye. Well, what happens if Derrick Henry, God forbid, knock on wood or whatever's closest to you, what happens if Derrick Henry makes a return from the Jones fracture and has a situation where he's placed on the COVID list? What would that do to mutate? No pun intended. What would happen to the Titans season and their prospects of being able to win a championship? It would fundamentally alter the competition. And so this is something that, again, for the second season in a row, we're going to all have to take into account. And it will simply be a monitor situation. What I would say to you about it, though, is don't, and I know COVID is a polarizing conversation, and we've been through it enough, and that I'm not interested in, I don't care, frankly, what side of the argument, if you choose to have such arguments, I don't care what side of the argument you're on. I could not care less about people's opinions on this particular matter, either side. What I will say to you is the best approach seems to not be overreactionary. Just kind of take it as it comes to you. Take the information that's disseminated, make your own decisions as a result, and we will see how this thing plays itself out, as opposed to getting on Twitter and fighting with somebody about your position on COVID, because that is an extremely unproductive exercise, regardless of how you feel about it. You're not changing anybody's minds doing something that way, and you're certainly not going to accomplish that, because we've certainly got phone calls about it every time we bring up COVID in sports. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show. We'll get you updated for our stretch of the National Signing Day UT cycle. And if you want to jump in on the phone lines, you can do so. 615-737-1045 is the number. 615-737-1045. Derek R. on YouTube says about my Derrick Henry analogy. Don't you put that curse on us, Ricky Bobby. What if we want to get on Twitter and argue with people? Well, you're entitled to do as you like. Just as with everything else, you're entitled to do what you like. But I honestly, if you want to spend your time that way, that's on you. Lucas, do I have time to take a call, or do you want me to get to polls? All right, we'll come back. We'll do some polls. We'll wrap up the show. Some updates on UT's signing class and what I'm looking for at Titans practice today.
They check me out. Don't get that happen.
All right. So if you have no idea what that noise is, it is something incredible. Something so fantastic on National Signing Day as we get ready to wrap up our leg of things here on 104.5 The Zone. That is the nation's number one recruit, Travis Hunter, who just committed to Jackson State and Deion Sanders, spurning, as you heard, him putting on hats for Georgia, for FSU, taking them off as soon as he puts them on and throwing them, launching them to the side, only to reveal under his quarter zip or under his zip up that he's got a Jackson State t-shirt on. He throws on the Jackson State hat. It's the most disrespectful, most delightful thing that I've seen on this National Signing Day. It is incredible. Now, as far as Tennessee is concerned, we have had no updates since Taven Jackson, if memory serves, at this point. So the 17 signee class continues to hold strong, good for 15th best in the country at this point. 104.5 The Zone will continue to cover things. Let's go to Ryan in Pleasant View who wants to talk about that audio you just heard. What's up, Ryan?
Hey, man, how's it going?
It's going great.
Hey, I wanted to talk about that. It seems to me that's awesome for the young man.
Sure.
I would probably do the same thing, but is the NCAA going to come in and say something about that? Because it's kind of getting ridiculous. It's happening more and more as we go. So
say something about what? I guess can you be a little more specific? Just the general, like, I don't understand what you're asking me.
Well, what I'm asking is the NCAA going to come in and say, no, you can't do that after, he was committed to FSU. So I want to get your take on that because I think this is super interesting.
Not at first glance, Ryan. Like, I don't think the NCAA, I wouldn't think they would have jurisdiction on him being committed and then deciding to decommit. Like, that's not something that they've ever brought down issues on before, especially not with the way that everything has been made easier on players to be able to move. So I don't think that there would be any kind of NCAA action on something like that. But, we'll see. They haven't done anything like that before.
If anything's legal, if everything's legal as far as NIL opportunities and whatnot, no, what could they possibly do?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, he's decommitting from one school, committing to another school.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing the context of something that he was asking me about, because that's not something that I can recall there ever being an issue with before, especially not in today's landscape. Squeeze Josh and Gallatin in really quickly. What's up, Josh?
Yes. It's been reported that, I don't know, of course I haven't just researched it, but evidently that Travis Hunter is getting paid $1 million to film a documentary with Jacksonville State with the name and image likeness stuff. I don't know where we stop at this. Once they're in school, I understand maybe them recovering some money, but he's not even at that school yet. So this is like, to me, it falls under more like recruiting violations than it would name, image, likeness.
They're not violations anymore. It's all open. And I get your point, and I hadn't seen the part about the documentary. It's not Jacksonville State, though. It is Jackson State, just to be specific.
Jacksonville State did beat Florida State this year, though.
Justice. So now Jackson State and Jacksonville State
own Florida State.
Telling Mike Norvell to hold that L, Mike. Sit down, little boy. It's better when Slay does it than when I do it. Little Penny. Hey.
He'll do it Friday.
Oh, God. Aren't people going to be able to watch that game in a suite with Ramon and Slay?
Yes.
Oh, God.
That'll be fun.
If I wasn't flying to Pittsburgh on Saturday morning, I would go to that with them. That would be incredible. It doesn't, at what point does it stop is the caller's question. And here's what I'll say, like, does it matter? Why in the larger scheme of things, right? Does it personally affect you? And I understand if you have a certain idea of what college football is, or rather what college football is supposed to be. And I would just say to you, if Like, that call sounds to me like what Dabo Swinney would say to me about this, right? And I'm not outright dismissing the caller like we did Dabo earlier, but it's not realistic about what is happening. Now, if things change, it will be after this discovery period, right, that we talked about with NIL, where things are kind of the Wild West until, I believe, January 7th of this upcoming year, where they've had this discovery period to decide what they like and what they need to legislate harder, the NCAA, which is just really an excuse for them to take a back seat while everybody else figures it out for them. But we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. Meantime, we got polls.
Oh, Nelly, this is Keith Jackson talking about college football. It's time to stop the count. The polls have closed, and the granddaddy of them all has been tallied with your poll update. Oh, Nelly, talking about Buck Reising Show producer and daily correspondent, Lucas Panzica.
What is the dumbest thing in sports this week? And the overwhelming majority of replies are indeed Gene Chizik.
Dummy.
Mahogany says Vol fans upset at the idea of Bronny considering Tennessee. Brian says people that say Josh Heupel cannot recruit.
Top 15 right now, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see how it finishes at the end of the day. I'm going to talk about it on primetime tonight.
How do you judge Josh Heupel's first full recruiting class so far? 44% say surpassing expectations. 41% say right on track. 15% say could be better.
Yeah, I think that there's always a contingent of Vols fans that are going to want more. Top 15. By God, this is Tennessee. Ought to be top 5, top 3. Damn you, Jimbo.
Is it worth third or fourth round money via NIL to bring Cade Mays back to Tennessee? 67% say yes.
That is interesting, and you're going to see that from more and more people who are on the fence as far as their pro prospects are concerned. Yeah, give me a sweet deal.
I mean, third and fourth round money, what are we talking about? $500,000?
I would have to look that up specifically.
Rookie minimum is what, $400,000?
That sounds correct. Again, I would have to look that up.
Have you ever... Go
really
ahead.
Quickly, Adam Schefter, the NFL has officially announced Las Vegas will host the Super Bowl in 2024.
There you go.
Something to keep in mind.
Have you ever faked sick to avoid going to school to watch a sporting event? 66% are with me and say yes. Felice Sampras says March Madness and the World Cup. That's my guy right there.
Never in my life have I done that.
Really?
Well, I mean, Indiana basketball, I can watch it that's the only sporting event that I would have a moment like that.
March Madness was always during school.
Yeah, but I went to school I went to high school in Indiana. Like, they would have it on in the classrooms if IU was playing. Like, we're not actually learning during that time. Are you kidding me?
My mom was always a tough one to convince that I was sick, but I was able to do it on that one day of the year, National Signing
what you
Day.
put in the poll is a sporting event. National
Right.
Signing Day is something completely different.
When it
You
was
have to be a special kind of craven and deprived to skip school because of National Signing Day. I respect it,
I will
but I
say,
also fear it.
when it was in February, it was a much bigger deal. It felt like a much bigger deal than now because at this point, on most years, you had no idea where most prospects were going. By the way, can I add one final submission for Dumbest Thing in Sports on the way out?
Quickly.
Don't tweet at recruits.
Don't tweet at recruits. Blaine and Mickey are next.